Alright everybody, Diecastmania here, and welcome back to another model review. Today we have the Diecast Masters Model 41002, the 1/50th scale CZM EK160 cylinder crowd drilling rig. So this model is available as of this moment directly from CZM themselves through their web shop, and it is packaged just like any other Diecast Masters model. So the EK160 is a foundation drilling rig which is used for the installation of drilled shaft type deep foundations, which have applications in the infrastructure / heavy civil sector, so for bridges, for example, in vertical construction for foundations for high-rise buildings, and in the energy sector for power transmission lines and substations. The majority of CZM's lineup of foundation equipment is built off of Caterpillar excavator chassis, and in the case of the EK160, it's based off of the 330 Next Gen. So you can see here, the tin is just like any other Diecast Masters model. It has the photo of the real machine on the top, the model on the front and back, as well as the specifications. And here we can see the specs are just a quick capture of what's available on the brochure of the real machine. Alright, so let's go ahead and pop this tin open. Inside, we actually have a Diecast Masters Coming Soon catalog. So basically, the branding on the packaging, as soon as you put a carton in the tin, the CZM stops and the Caterpillar begins again. So we got a nice big thick chunk of foam up top. Lift that off. A little bit of tissue paper. And there it is. So here it is out of the box. We have these plastic sleeves for the tracks that come right off. And then we have a little clear rubber band that comes off the cab. And other than that, the model is complete and ready to go. We're going to be moving on to the functionality of the model. So it has metal tracks with a spring tensioner. They do roll on rougher surfaces, but not on smoother ones. It is based off of a Caterpillar variable gauge undercarriage for specialty applications such as this one for greater stability. Now, they did replicate the mechanism on the bottom side, or at least try to have that detailing, though it is permanently fixed in the extended position, which, you know, if you're going to pick one of the two, it makes a whole lot more sense on a drill rig model to be able to stably pose it in drilling configuration. It still transports just fine, though you're going to have more of a side overhang on your trailer, but honestly, most of the time I'm probably going to have this either crawling around or in position to drill at the display, so not a huge miss there. So the model itself, quite obviously, it rotates pretty nicely. The mast itself has some pretty good cylinders, so you can raise it up like that, bring it close. You can tilt it so you have a little bit of a batter or angle. So it is pretty positionable. Everything holds just like it should. There are two winches on this model. The bottom winch operates the Kelly bar up and down, and the top winch is more of your service winch. So it just leads to a hook at the top of the model, just a plastic hook right there. So you have the flexibility to have it posed with that winch working or not. And the winches themselves, they have these keys. There's actually two of them, forbid you ever lose one. And it's kind of like just a half circle pattern to it. So just kind of match it up onto the metal part of the winch, and there you go. You know, the winches themselves have, I think it's a plastic spool, but probably going to want to watch what you're doing with the winches and make sure you don't bird cage them and lock everything up, as it there really is no good way to take this thing apart to de-spool and clean all that up. So what makes this a cylinder crowd drill rig, like the name says, instead of having a cable mechanism to raise and lower the rotary assembly, you have a hydraulic cylinder which runs down the mast. So the cable version would be a EK160 LS, whereas the EK160 is a cylinder version. So you can actually see it a lot better in this perspective, but that is the crowd cylinder, which determines the stroke of the rotary, meaning the range of motion it has. So it's roughly able to travel from here down to the end of the mast here. So, you know, if you're really interested in the hows and whys and everything, you know, CZM has a bunch of videos you can check out, and has a lot of good information on their website. The auger here, I believe it scales out to be roughly a 36 or 40 inch auger. I think 36 is a common size. It is plastic, but it does rotate pretty nicely. The Kelly bar itself is made of 2 plastic halves, so that seam line does kind of get caught inside the rotary a little bit, and it still works just fine. And the crowd cylinder for the rotary, it's not the stiffest, but considering that the rotary itself is plastic, you do want it to be able to move somewhat easily. So now we're going to move on to our final functionality test. So we're going to crawl the machine over, raise the mast, and get it into position for drilling. So now with the mast raised, we're going to lower the Kelly bar and the rotary. So in this case, we're just going to pretend that we have a shaft already partially drilled, and we're at our target depth now, augering out. And now once the auger is filled, we're going to lift the Kelly bar and the rotary back up and get ready to do the spin-off, or just releasing all the drill spoils from the actual auger itself. So we pick it all up, rotate it over, and just counter-rotate the auger. And just kind of do a quick back and forth to make sure everything is clear off of it, and go back in position to continue with the drilling. So in real life, once the shaft has reached its target depth by design, it's inspected and cleaned, rebar cage is set, and then concrete is placed in it. Then the concrete's allowed to cure, and eventually the top of the shaft is exposed or cut and allowed to tie into your rest of your rebar, whether that be a mat or footing or anything like that. So here we're going to be moving on to the detail on the EK160. So this is a modified 330 next gen casting. First impression is that the cab itself is different. You do gain an opening door. Even if you're using the pointer, it is a little difficult at times. So inside we can see an interior that's finished off in 2 different colors, gray and black. Pretty decent. We have a cab guard on the front and on the top, made of plastic. The door itself, they probably could have added a little more detail to it, rather than having it look like it's just entirely made of glass. Something that I'm pretty impressed with on this model is just how nice the CZM graphics are done. You can see there's quite a bit to them. Here's the graphic on the rear. We have the rest for the mast and the cables. So on the top of the model, we can see your standard details on there. We can see the swing motor, and we can see that there are a lot of hydraulic lines in this model. Typical Diecast Masters soft rubber, but they're all there, and they run to the rotary and the crowd cylinder. Here's another look at the right hand side of the model. We can see the arm and the linkage for positioning the mast, all the cylinders. It's pretty nice, and we have the winch motors here. We're going to look at that auger again. I believe is a 36-inch diameter auger. The auger itself is plastic, though it does look pretty nice and sharp. The Kelly bar itself, if we look at it, doesn't have that much detail on there. There's none of the interlocking texture or anything. But honestly, that really would be something that you wouldn't be looking for unless you're actually looking for it specifically. You know, it really doesn't detract from the function or the detail of the model for most purposes anyway. We do have exposed screw heads on the rotary itself and on the Kelly bar. Caps would have been nice, but it is what it is. So all in all, you know, the detail is pretty nice on this model. It does have quite a bit of extras on it compared to the 330 next gen standard excavator model. Just honestly, it in my opinion, from a detail standpoint, does do quite a bit better. Alright, so wrapping up this review, what I think about the CZM EK160 by Diecast Masters. Personally, I think it is a very nice first model from both Diecast Masters and CZM. I'm just really happy and impressed to see this level of commitment to putting out a model of a piece of foundation equipment that you'd more often see in the States rather than overseas, as the majority of the manufacturers kind of have their roots in. Just as a quick side note, yes, CZM is actually Brazilian, but the EK160 as shown here and the rest of their North American lineup is designed and built specifically for the North American market and soil conditions right in Georgia. This rig kind of fits in that general price point of all the other drill rig models. It's not the lowest, it's not the highest. From the standpoint of it being a promotional model, being a collector's piece, you do get quite a bit of functionality and detail for the price paid. Yeah, and you know, thinking for most collectors out there that don't really have a whole lot of experience with foundation equipment, drill rigs, anything like that, I think it fits in very nicely. You get a pretty decent sized package, but it's not the largest out there. It's not something ungainly, something huge that you're gonna have to assemble parts on or have, you know, dedicated display space to. You know, this would fit just as nice on the desk as it would on diorama or a shelf. You know, it's a 330 next gen carrier, so it's not a huge footprint. I think actually the 352 high reach is much taller and wider than this machine. So in all honesty, it's a good model. It's a good first attempt by CZM and Diecast Masters. You do get quite a bit of detail and functionality, like I said. And, you know, it is really exciting to see a new model of foundation equipment, and CZM's done it pretty well, Diecast Masters on the EK160. You know, as far as things that I think that could have improved this model would be, you know, maybe slightly less chunky tracks, the addition of accessory kits such as different augers, or the option to have the ultra short mast USM version. CZM does make it pretty clear as a selling point that the contractor is able to switch between the standard and ultra short versions of the mast. You know, honestly, in the future, I'd like to see more models from CZM and Diecast Masters, maybe even something large and ambitious like the flagship EK300 model. So all in all, I'm pretty pleasantly surprised with this model and decently happy with it. And honestly, if you're looking to add a piece of specialty foundation equipment to your collection, you're not really sure what to get, and you're already used to the Caterpillar models by Diecast Masters, the EK160 is a great choice to add to the collection. You know, personally, I was a little bit skeptical and wasn't sure that it was actually going to arrive in 1/50th scale, not knowing the manufacturer, but now knowing Diecast Masters and CZM are working together on this model, and having it in hand, I can confidently say it's a great choice to add. Anyway, there you go. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you all in the next video.